Hello and welcome to the day one speedrun of Blueprints. Currently on speedrun.com, they're not accepting runs, so I don't know exactly what's the optimal time, but I have seen some runs in the 19-minute range, and I'm sure 18, even low 18 is possible with the current strategies. But for me, I was just trying to get my first completed run so I could get the trophy and the achievement. But I thought I'd talk about it because I enjoy watching these runs, and I'm sure people will too. So I pretty much always go for hallway on the left. And the reason for that is because I want to be sure that I get garage. If I can't get garage in a reasonable time, meaning by like the 5th rank or so, I'll reset. And so I might as well just do this side first so that I can reset sooner rather than filling out the whole east wing and then having to reset later on if I don't get garage. The reason garage is important is because the main strategy is get garage, supply power to the garage with the breaker box room, and then with 2 rerolls, you're guaranteed to get the tomb in the outside room slot. The reason for that is the first 3 options they show you are always the same. And then there are only 8 options total, so that means in the next 2 rerolls you'll be shown all of the options and 1 repeating option. And the way that it picks is it will run through all the entire cycle, every option for the outside rooms before showing you any duplicates. So in Tetris, it'll empty the bag before it pulls a new bag. And we know this specifically for the outside room. The logic of the internal rooms is much more complicated, I'm sure, and the pool is much larger, so you can't reliably get that anyway. But when thinking about the checklist of things you need to actually complete the day 1 run, 2 rerolls will guarantee you get the tomb in the outside slot, and you need a powered garage to get outside in the first place. The reason the tomb is important is it allows you to go down and get the minecart and move that out of the way, meaning 1/2 of the final solution is satisfied. The other thing you will need is access to the gear puzzle, meaning either the foundation or some other method. Foundation is the main method. A secondary method would be pump room plus tomb, allowing you to skip over the need for foundation via the boat skip. There are some other more niche ways to do it that are good to know of if you're going to be trying this for yourself, namely power hammer, powered pump room, allowing you to both drain the fountain and set the reservoir down 1 by use of the reserve tank. But those are so exceedingly unlikely that if you're doing this just for the achievement, you might as well just treat tomb and foundation / tomb and pump room as the only 2 options. And then the third piece of the puzzle for actually completing the run is the path to the antechamber. And this is the thing I've actually had the most difficulty with, because not only do you need the path, but you're pretty low on resources, which is why I really prioritize all these gems and keys and such, but also that you run out of steps. So in my 10-ish hours of attempts for this, I've noticed that steps were beginning to become a concern, so I started altering my playstyle to be more step focused. But the good news is, well, more step focused in the sense that I will double back less, even if it means giving up like a minor resource such as the key in the dark room, but I have to double back all the way to the start to get the breaker box. I'm okay leaving that because it'll save me 10 steps, whereas in a casual play, especially after you have the orchard, you would always go back to do that because resources are much more important. But for these runs, it's often easier to just reset. The good news about being okay, so see here, I've got the garage. Side note that I haven't confirmed is I think approaching the garage from the right side, as I did here, meaning the door will be on the right side of the garage square. Oh, I didn't do that here. Okay. In my previous runs, I like to approach the garage from the right side. I think the pool of rooms is slightly smaller when approaching it from the right side, and that you're more likely to get garage in that situation. As a counterexample, when you go straight to the west from the start, and then you go straight up the west side in column 1, it's sometimes hard to get garage. Sometimes you could be right on the edge and never get garage, whereas when approaching it from the right, it often happens right away. As I was saying about the steps, though, I've found that you really only need one extra source of food, or extra source of steps, meaning we're going to count the dining room as like you're going to get it every single time, and so your pool of steps is like 70. That's not quite enough to run all the way outside and back up, especially if you have a solution involving the foundation where you need to double back. If you have the tomb in the pump room, then you get to do the whole downstairs section in one swoop, and that saves a lot of steps, which is nice. But pretty much everyone doing this run will get at least the dining room. However, it might be very close or even not enough, depending on the amount of natural doubling back you have to do while drafting. So other sources of steps, kitchen, as we see here, in which we would spend gold for steps. There's running shoes and sleeping mask. Note that this dice pickup was from using the upgrade disc in security, which in general is just a waste of time, but if you get security particularly early, there's a good chance you can upgrade the room before you've even drafted it. However, it loves to give you storeroom or den or courtyard, and those, you'll often place down right away. Boudoir is one of the ones that you might place a little bit later. I've also gotten mailroom for same-day delivery and a few other ones. So I think the first upgrade disc is worth placing. Subsequent upgrade discs, just because of the nature of the pool of the rooms you're upgrading, probably not. And there's really no other use for it because with the tomb strategy, you're not really going to go trading post to where you could trade it for resources or a key item. With one noticeable exception being if you're trying to craft the power hammer, which is one of those ways we talked about that is fringe, but you could go through the cliffside exit to get basement access. However, you would also need pump room to give you fountain access for the minecart. So in that situation, you wouldn't actually need tomb, I believe. But that is, a lot needs to happen, namely getting the broken lever and the battery pack are both unlikely. As I was saying, other sources of steps. I found sleeping mask and salt shaker to overperform. Running shoes is nice, but I don't think it's quite reliable enough to be like your only source of extra food. Now, the obvious answer is Secret Garden just solves both problems right away. It gives you enough food, it allows backtracking to get the extra food. If you have conference room, it gives it to you right away. Secret Garden plus Salt Shaker is like, 8-ish extra steps on top of all the food you're getting from Secret Garden. I like to pick up the stuff in those sort of rooms right away so that I don't forget about them during the little cutscene. That's why you see me rush for the key or often look around the room before I do the main things, such as drafting it. One of minor optimization was that I didn't go into the den earlier to try to save 2 steps, but it ended up costing me, let's say, 4 steps because I had to double back into it later. And you can see the den in position 3, rank 2 is at a dead end. So that ended up costing me steps because I had to go back to get that gem. There you see me deliberating on if it's worth to buy something for 5 or try to save up for 8. I'm getting pretty worried about the steps right now. Similarly, I note that the food is bacon and eggs. rather than one of the ones that cares about what type of thing you draft. But I have not bought it yet. And now you see I am drafting up near the antechamber, and things are getting really close. Since I don't have Secret Garden key and I'll be going for a Great Hall run, note that this locked trunk there on my right is very important, so just keep in mind that that's there. Little time save is you get to do this door while the safe is rising up. If you go right over to the safe, it's like the animation takes a while and it's hard to enter the code. But I was immediately rewarded for doing the door first because I got conference rooms, so that spreading the money will go right there rather than me having to backtrack to get the money. Because at this point I am a bit worried about the step count. So a total of 18 coins from the office spreading of staff incentives. And in my mind now, this is actually the pivotal moment of the whole run. So I have Tomb with 2 reroll dice, but I don't have the second way to get down to the gear puzzle. So I'm thinking it's Foundation or bust, and I basically have to reroll. If I don't hit Foundation, the run's dead anyway. And then I'll have to find another way to get dice, or maybe only do with 1 dice, which is possible to get the Tomb with 1 dice, but no longer guaranteed. However, this is the last spot I have access to that the Foundation could spawn in, so I have to re-roll for it. And I get really lucky to pull the pool here, because if I get Pump Room, that will allow me to forego Foundation entirely, like I said, and do the boat skip, which we'll see later in the video. Now 0 gems, I have to take the sauna. Of note is that often there will be a key or a gem in here, and a good thing I did that because I would need this gem for this last critical spot here, and I might want to slam pick Pump Room, but then I would cut off access to the antechamber. Picking Laboratory is actually also really lucky because if you didn't know, getting these experiments is one of the most reliable ways to get either dice or extra keys. So the best thing here is set your dice to 2. The second best, I would say, is gain 1 key for every 2 hallways. And then you just pick whatever condition is most viable for you. And so I remembered that I had the trunk there in the office. I didn't actually need to get that key, I'm just realizing now, but that is, sort of a minor thing, maybe 5-10 seconds. So spending from 1 down to 0 immediately goes back up to 2 because of the experiment, and then I get rewarded with 2 dice. Now I know it's locked, and I'm cashing in all my money for this. Note the coupon book is making everything 1 cheaper, and I'm trying to stay above 10 coins for the commissary. I don't need to be buying all those bananas, but I just did it to be safe than sorry in case I make a wrong turn or something. I misspoke a little bit because I have not yet drafted the Pump Room. When I said I know I got it, I was referring to the Tomb, but I still need the Pump Room to actually get across the reservoir. I like to see if both doors are locked before I decide on which one to do. I have 2 keys, so I'm going to do both. It's just a question of knowing what's there. Now with 4 gems, picking veranda just for the chance of extra items. I'm also thinking if I need extra dice, meaning when I go south to the other side of Chapel and I need to reroll to even get the Pump Room, it would be nice to have, say, 3 or 4 dice so that I could still be guaranteed Tomb rather than having to risk getting Tomb on the first reroll. Sometimes there's a locked chest in here, and that could give you dice. Sometimes there's a table with an item on it, either an apple, a gem, or dice, I believe. And getting Pump Room there is the last possible chance to get it, so very fortunate. But like I said, I've done like 10-ish hours of runs, and you're just seeing the one that lined up. You're not seeing all the other ones that got to this point and failed. And of course, I pull it in the wrong direction there, and then I have to wait for this long animation, so that's another optimization for, another run, is you can push the left one forward, the middle one forward, and they both stay forward. Then all you need to do is tap the greenhouse to put 1 unit into the tank, and then it will be 3 out of 4 full. And then you tap the reservoir to drain the 1 unit into the tank, which is all it can take, so it'll stop there with 1 missing. And I look to confirm that it's happened, and that is all you need for the reservoir skip. So you'll note that I have 51 steps here, and I definitely don't need all of those. So I didn't need quite so much money, but I think I did need at least, a few bananas to make up the difference. I'm not sure that the fish alone would have been enough. So the route here for the end game is with a powered garage. We can leave through the garage and run to the outside room location. There we'll re-roll for tomb. We'll go down, we'll pull out the minecart. Then, going across the reservoir from the minecart side, we'll do the gear puzzle, open the chamber, and then run back inside to actually finish the game. So this part, I now know for sure I have it. And you'll note that we only need 1 reroll to get the tomb, which happens, let's say, half of the time, just by the way that the pool works. Something else to note is that since the foundation, pool, and pump room are less common rooms to spawn, drafting the library is a good way to get those. However, since the library is only a room with a single exit, and you'll be drafting both the library and those other rooms later in the house, it's sometimes a little difficult to fit both that and the room you need in, especially for the foundation where you need access to the back side of the foundation to actually pull the lever to lower the elevator. I've heard that running shoes have like a 90+% chance to trigger when you're outside of the house. So for this end game part, running shoes will pay off a lot more than they will normally. And that can be something to bake into your considerations about if you have enough steps, if you need to be drafting to acquire more steps or not. And I said sleeping mask is one of the best ways I have found to get enough steps without really changing how I play. Runs that have sleeping mask, suddenly I just don't have to worry about it anymore. Another good way is the nursery. I think it's worth mentioning that between regular bedrooms you already want to be drafting, such as boudoir for the free gem, and then weird cases like aquarium is a bedroom, and that'll give you 5 steps from nursery. Bunk bed will give you 10 steps from nursery. If you can get an early nursery and just plop it down there, I think it's worth the gem. I've had, like, let's say 3 runs and 2 lack of steps. In addition to holding backwards through that cutscene rather than forwards, something I saw another runner do that I will be implementing is when you first run across the gear puzzle, you can sort of click it once and let the animation finish while you're running away toward the lever, and that saves, the 5-ish seconds of one rotation here. I checked my grid there, my map there, just to see if it was worth going up to the foundation as an exit because it was further into the house to save time. Then I realized I didn't draft the foundation. That's a different run, not this run. Also, since I didn't do the box puzzle, that path wouldn't even be open. Just funny to think about. Theoretically, you could save some steps that way if you happen to take the boat over, but you also have foundation. I don't know. The thing is the crate puzzle in the basement, it takes a really long time, certainly longer than the boat animation. As slow as the boat animation seems, because you're not doing anything, it's not that long. So yeah, as of now, for day 1, this is pretty much the optimal route until another strategy is discovered or someone gets insanely lucky with Power Hammer or something like that. Something else that's been discussed is if you get a powered laboratory and solve the laboratory puzzle, then you could get Black Bridge Grotto. Download the new experiment pack, and one of those experimental conditions in the laboratory is unseal an antechamber door. However, I don't even think that's possible because you need a burning glass to get the satellite uplink from the garden. So I think that's like a once-in-a-lifetime run, and I'm not even convinced that it would be that much faster because you have to go really out of the way to sort of get that done. But it is interesting to think about that it's theoretically possible to open the grotto and get the new set of experiments on day 1. Metal detector going off there right at the end. I timed this manually just here in Adobe Premiere because I don't have the proper setup, and also I don't even know what rules that the community will decide on at the end, whether it's from clicking save file creation, or whatever. We'll figure it out later, but make sure if you are going for this that you hit, save and continue, and you actually collect the trophy. And then you go back to your main save and you import that trophy, because if you don't, it'll stay stranded here on this and you might accidentally delete it or whatnot. Anyway, this is a very complicated run because it requires a lot of adaptation on the fly, and you can't really plan for every possibility. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed.